Early in life, some health issues affected Michele Gunn's confidence. She was able to make a choice to overcome those, and then, after deciding that she would be a stay-at-home parent, needed to return to the workforce and had issues to overcome there as well. Come on this exciting journey as we learn how Michele Gunn faced these issues, overcome the problems, and then move forward to now helping other people find their purpose and meaning in life.
Welcome to Share.Care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.Care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.Care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to the Share.Care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own selfish best interest to help others. Now today, our special guest is Michele Gunn. After finishing her BA in marketing at the University of Michigan, Michele worked from an executive assistant up to a business administrator and then started her own business, Purple Passion Jewelry. But she never felt quite fulfilled. Michele then learned that she receives great satisfaction when she helps other people succeed. Now Michele helps professional mums find their inner talents to live a fulfilling and purposeful life while building strong relationships. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you so much, Damian. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you on the show. Do you want to start by going through a bit of your background and the challenges that you faced that led you to doing what you're doing now?
Absolutely. And actually, in my older age now, it's very easy to look back and see, right? Yeah. And see hints and other things and strengths that you had from within that you didn't realize you had. I had kind of a rough childhood as far as self-confidence. And I had some physical issues that were hard to get over. And I actually did what I realize now was coach myself out of that to build up my self-confidence. That's one of the things I gleaned from my past. But getting married just before I finished college, my husband and I knew we wanted to start a family. That was the most important thing to us. And we believed that it was important to have a parent home with the family, with the children when they're young, especially in their formative years, right?
Yeah.
To instill values and just to be there for them. So I decided to put my career on hold and stay home with the kids. I did that. And when I did go back to work when they were a little bit older, like you said, I started off being an assistant. I did have a business marketing degree. And I did learn that it's a little bit hard to start your career once you're older and have children. But regret it? Absolutely not. I think my kids are the wonderful adults they are today because of the influence we had on them. But it did bring challenges. I did find out that I was very successful in management, managing people, working with people. I love seeing people be successful. Again, through those years, I didn't really notice that's what was bringing me the joy was actually working and developing with people. I just thought that I like to be a manager. Don't get me wrong. There's some bossiness in me, of course.
That's important. It's important, especially as a parent.
It runs in our family. So my sisters do say. But my last role as an administrator in a church atmosphere, we were looking at a way to bring our parishioners more ownership and being more involved in the parish and really bringing out their true talents. Because many times in anything, when we look for volunteers, we usually look at what people do for a living and decide that's where they need to be as a volunteer. That's not always the case.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times society or our parents tell us what to do,
Yeah.
and we don't always do what we're best at.
Yeah.
And when we were on that search, the pastor and I, is when we came across Gallup CliftonStrengths.
Yeah.
And after our research, we decided that's the program we wanted to bring into our parish.
Yeah.
And of course, that was the first time I took the assessment. Well, the only time that I took the assessment, and it was really like a light bulb went off.
Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't a surprise, but more of a confirmation of who I was and why I could be successful at things, but not be fulfilled.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And that's what we knew. We wanted to bring in a coach. And I was like, I want to do that. And that's really how I got into coaching. And I get the most joy and satisfaction out of helping people understand what their true value is, what they have to offer.
Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That and because from what I read, you do a lot of volunteering as well, so you help a lot of people. Can we step back a little bit to, you mentioned there as your childhood that you had some self-confidence issues, and I'm just looking at my notes here. You also said that there were some health issues there that were affecting your confidence. Do you want to expand a little bit on that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that would experience a very similar thing, like from a young age, that they've had some confidence issues and possibly to do with whether it, a variety of different physical or health things. Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
It was really physical as far as appearance. So my kids, most of my kids inherited small mouths with just jam-packed teeth. And back then, the doctors were more free. They didn't understand medication that they gave pregnant women. And that had side effects on mostly like my teeth, which is a huge part, right? Because if you don't smile, people have preconceived notions of why you're not smiling. And then when you smile and you have something that you view and other people view as ugly, it really, really knocks you down. It makes you fearful to interact. It just hampers everything in life. And I just one day decided as a teenager that I can't live like that anymore. And so I actually started doing what I now know is affirmations.
Yes. Okay. Well, you have a beautiful smile. I mean,
thank you. My parents will tell you that it costs a lot of money to get my teeth like that. And I still have issues, but thank you.
To put it in context, though, I mean, I had braces 4 times as I was growing up, so and as an adult.
I had braces. I had pitting in my teeth, and my teeth get cavities really easy. So I didn't want to do anything with the appearance of the teeth until they had the braces. I wanted to be straight before they'd make them look smooth and normal.
Well, I just want to talk about that because, I mean, I can relate to that. As like when I was a kid, one of the comments I got before I had braces was that I could eat an apple. If an apple was stuck in a fence, I could eat it because my teeth weren't really well at the front. So I just want to talk about that from your perspective, and not that I'd have ever thought of eating an apple out of a fence before someone mentioned that, but but I just wanted from your perspective, how you dealt with that, and because you said you got to a point where you just said, doesn't matter, I can't live like this. I'm going to change my attitude. Can you talk through how that come about? What gave you that motivation to say, look, I'm just going to change the way I'm thinking?
To pinpoint it, I can't tell you. It was something internal. It was just something internal where I just made that decision
Yeah.
that things needed to change.
Yeah.
It just did. And I actually coached myself using affirmations. And what I tell my clients today that have some issues, find three things that are good about yourself. Not what you do for others, because a lot of times we put our value in what we do for others, but just what is good about you. And some people have a very hard time doing that. So, we recommend ask other people, what do you hear other people compliment you on? Ask people who are close to you, how would they describe you? Pick 3 words and write them down and post them someplace where you see them. The best thing to do is to stand in front of a mirror at least twice a day, in the morning and at night. Look yourself in the eye and say those words. And you continue to do that every day until you believe it.
Yeah.
People have a hard time with that.
Well, it's interesting what you said there about, yes, I agree with you. People have a hard time with that. But it was interesting, and I've heard it very, from a lot of people, that they're not really sure why or where it was, but it was just something that they just decided that something was going to be different. So it wasn't like there was anything that was specific that triggered it. It was just an internal thing where they made that decision. Was that it sounds like that was your experience as well. You just decided, I'm going to do something different. And that was yeah. And then what you said is you used affirmations. Did you do any research as to how to do that, or how did you come up with using affirmations?
Couldn't tell you.
Did you have any?
Couldn't tell you. I do not know. Never heard of them before then. It's just, I guess I was giving myself a pep talk, I guess.
Yeah. So you just decided, I'm going to talk more positively about yourself, to use that as an analogy. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And did you, like, when you said you started giving yourself a pep talk, was there any specific things that you modeled it off, or what kind of things did you say to yourself?
God, it was so long ago. I don't remember exactly. I just really focused on what was good about me, what I saw that was good about me, what I knew I could do well.
Yeah. So your choice was, okay, there's a whole bunch of things that are, that could be bad, but they're probably assets anyway that you're just not realizing. But you decided to say, hey, I'm just going to focus on what's good about me and live my life that way. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair to say.
Yeah. It sounds like fairly simple instructions though, doesn't it?
It is. And actually, and that's what CliftonStrengths was founded on, looking at what's right about people instead of what's wrong. Because society, and, as a parent, had I known that when my kids were born, before they were born, I would have raised them differently. Because we are so focused on what people do wrong and to correct it, instead of focusing on what they do right and nurturing that into a great strength. Yeah. That's really how we should raise our children and treat each other.
Yeah. So did that shift as a parent when you did become aware of that? Did you shift how you related to your children from that point?
By the time I realized that, my kids were all adults.
Okay.
So, yes. Do I tell them that all the time? Yes. And I have 2 granddaughters, so I do try to instill that in my son and his wife.
Yes.
About looking for their strengths instead of getting on them about what's negative. Don't get me wrong. If something's will cause them danger or harm, we want to correct or stop that. But we also want to nurture. If a kid is talkative, a lot of times we want to shut them up.
Yes.
Keep them quiet instead of encouraging that. Yeah. Just like the kids who like to talk to strangers. You need to put limits, but let's not tell them not to be friendly. Yes. We need to encourage that and see how to use that to their advantage.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I remember reading a study, or about a study. I didn't read the actual research, and they wanted to find out why people, the really successful people excelled. And they studied people like Steven Spielberg and a whole bunch of people that were really, really successful. And they were looking for this common denominator that they all had. And they went through something like 280 different variables, and they couldn't find anything that was common amongst all of them, because they were huge sample it was. And it turned out that they found one eventually, and it was that generally it was the parent of the opposite sex, but it was the parent would have at a young age had an unquestioning belief in the child's ability. So if the child had said, "Oh, I want to be an astronaut," they would said, "You'll be the best astronaut ever." And this is at the age somewhere between the ages of 2 and 5. And at that point, and it wasn't like, "Oh, you better have a backup plan," or something like that. And what they found is it wasn't about whether the child was going to be an astronaut, because at 5, what do they know? But it was about whether the parent unquestionably believed in the child's ability, which set the difference. So that was a fascinating thing, but that links into what you're talking about, is reinforcing what's is good about them. Does that link into what you're sharing and what you now teach with people?
Absolutely. We definitely need to stay on the positive. And like you said, I mean, even me, when my youngest is now just turned 25. Mm-hmm. So still not sure what she wants to be when she grows up. And I'm like, look at how many times I changed. Look how long it took me to really find my passion, because we don't have all the experiences we need to make us who we are.
Yeah, and why do you need to go straight away?
Yeah, and a lot of times we're told, right? We're told, well, you're good at this, you should do this, focus on this, or the good one, right? You should do that because you'll make more money, right? You'll be miserable for all your life, but you'll have more money. Yeah.
I've got a few older friends that I know, and ironically, a lot of them are in the law profession, that they've got to the end of their life, and they're not at the end, but they're certainly near retirement or have retired, and they're going, yeah, if I could have done things differently, I probably would change a few things in that regard. How important do you think it is, from your perspective, to follow your passion as opposed to do what is expected of you?
Well, in the big scheme of things, it's way more important to follow your passion. When you say what's expected of you, there's so many people that have expectations, right? So first of all, who would you follow? Whose expectations? We can start with our parents. And our parents really, I think the biggest expectation that our parents have is for us to be happy and safe.
Yeah.
They have their view of what that looks like, which might not fit the child. So if we're more open to what that looks like, I think that we can fill those expectations by following our passion.
Yeah. Okay. And is that like following that? Because that's interesting what you're saying there about the expectations, and generally it's wanting to be happy and safe, but how to be happy and safe? Because that might be, you need to be a dentist and have a good career so that you've got good financial support, but you hate being dentist, and was it dentists have the highest suicide rate of any profession or something? Is that, there's a facetious joke that they're always looking down in the mouth, but but apparently, in that field, dentistry has a high suicide rate. I'm not sure why that is, although maybe someone will correct me and say that's something different. But I was just wondering, from that, coming back to that passion and finding that passion, I mean, from your perspective, going back to, you decided that you wanted to be more confident and focus on the things that you liked about yourself. Did it take a long time to make that transition, or did it happen fairly quickly?
It's probably still happening. I mean, we're
carry
always
a lot of baggage,
evolving.
don't we?
Yeah, right. So we're always evolving, right? The only constant is change.
Yeah.
I don't think that any person on this earth will ever fulfill their full potential while they're alive.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much to us. As far as when I was a teenager, I can't even tell you, because I still had self-confidence issues, just not as bad as they were. I got myself out of the hole, so to speak. But and honestly, there's certain things that bring joy. People talk about being happy, and joy is something more that comes from within. Happy is something I think we get from things usually. Where a joy is deep, and finding that joy is sometimes can take a lifetime because of responsibilities, expectations, and other things along those lines. So I think I might have wandered off your question a little bit.
No, but you stumbled onto something really fascinating. You say joy can take a lifetime. I'm interested do you want to expand on that a little bit? Because I didn't quite get where you were coming from. Is it like to find your own joy, or to just to be happy every day? What joy are you talking about there? Because that's interesting.
I think the joy that comes from within, the joy that no one can take from you, the joy that a bad day can't diminish, or an unkind person can't diminish. So for some people, it won't take that long. I think for others it will, because we're always looking in the wrong places for joy, because we're looking more for happiness. We're looking for things to give us fulfillment instead of something that comes from within.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask from that perspective. Is that, finding this happiness, is that I'm a bit lost on the question now. It's I think it's fascinating that for me, I see life as fairly simple, and and happiness does come within. It's not an external thing. And you say people are constantly looking outside of that. What do you think is a trigger that stops people looking outside and just realizes that it comes from within?
I think it's different for different people. Sometimes it's circumstances that force them to take a different look at their life. It could be a tragedy, could be, possibly where they've come close to the end of their life and they have a new look, or it could just be something that just changes within themselves. Could be a conversation. I mean, I don't think there's one thing that really pinpoints it, but I hope I can help people find that.
Yeah, because not only is it good for happiness, I mean, because your own personal happiness and the way you approach the day, but that joy and that happiness affects your health as well, isn't it? Yeah. Do you see that change with the people that you work with? Like when they start to find that joy, that they're also their health improves as well?
Yes. Well, we all know that the best medicine is laughter. So so that works. But also, when you feel better about yourself, you take better care of yourself. Right?
Good point.
Yes. When you love yourself,
Yeah.
you're going to take better care of yourself. When you don't love yourself, then you don't care how you treat your body.
Yeah. Is that important? Because, I mean, from your perspective, getting people to do that, I know from my side of things, with my son from a very early age, I always asked him, do you like yourself, and taught him to like himself. And that was something that, I've noticed in how he handles himself. He's just very calm and okay in any space. Is that a transition that people find difficult?
I would say it varies from person to person.
Yeah.
I don't think there's one answer for everyone.
Yeah. So from that perspective of finding this joy, you've gone through going back to your life and your journey. You went through school, you found, okay, I'm going to find the good things about myself. And then you went to university, the University of Michigan, if that's right, and you studied marketing. And then I gather you got married sometime shortly after that, or around that period, if I correctly, and you decided, and then you wanted to you have children, and you made that decision to stay home with your children. And I relate to that. My mum made that decision as well, and she stayed home with us children, and it was fabulous to have that connection and always have someone there, or one of the parents there. Is that, like, from your perspective, then you went to go back out into the workforce and then you found that a bit of a challenge. What were some of the things that you experienced there when you went back out into the workforce? And how did you overcome that?
Um, I probably didn't overcome it as far as getting the position that I wanted, because again, I was older and I needed an entry level position in marketing. And it just made it hard. I had interviews that went well, and
Yeah.
then, I got the letter, sorry, we're going a different way. You can only make assumptions when people don't tell you exactly what's happening. So I think that challenge wasn't overcome. I just had to take a different path. And so I stuck with what I was currently on. I did a little bit of marketing for a church that I worked with. And I really just stayed along the path of management, because my degree was business administration with a concentration in marketing. So it's a strong business background. So I stayed along that path and not as much the marketing path, although it's helped me understand and helped with social media. But I don't have that social media education that's very necessary nowadays. So I didn't really overcome it. I just had to kind of change the path a little bit.
And was that process of coming back out and working again? Because, I mean, how old were your children when you decided that you wanted to go back out into the workforce?
Well, I did it when they were young. Probably when the first two were babies. I did work part-time at night when my husband was home.
Yeah.
So we did have one of us were always home. And then there was one less than a year, my mom watched my oldest for a little bit. So they had family. Full-time, my youngest, I had three. My youngest was in elementary school, probably first grade.
Yeah.
But I was home until they went to school. And then they were with a friend who was a neighbor until I got home. So they didn't have to go into daycare. So not that daycare's bad. It's not. My daughter-in-law has her kids in daycare.
Yeah.
My son and daughter-in-law. So I'm not saying daycare's bad. That just wasn't a choice we made. But so it was just kind of making changes to what you thought your ideal plan was. Yeah. I mean, things don't always go the way you want.
No, that's very true. Yeah, I know. Like with my son, we had we were flexible in what we could do, so we had a lot of ability to shuffle things around, and some of the times we sent him to like the daycares, or especially during the holidays, just to give him interaction with other people as well, because it's very helpful from that perspective. So coming back out, like with the confidence side of things, was that something that you had to face again? Like, because you've been, you went through school, you had the confidence and issues, and then you decided to, okay, I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to focus on the good things about me. You've decided to stay home with the children and then come back out into the workforce. Now, to come into a new environment like that can be pretty daunting for people. Were there confidence issues that you had to overcome, and how did you do that?
There were some. I would say, and I do give the advice to moms, that if they choose to stay home with their kids, keep their intellect exercising, engage in conversations, volunteer, whatever. And I did with my kids, but not to the extent of in a professional atmosphere. I did Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, PTA, but not as much with things to utilize my business degree. So I would encourage people to do that. So I struggled a little bit with that, but I was blessed that my husband's extremely supportive and a big encourager and a fan. So he was always there. Yeah. He was always there to, pick me up if I felt down and to remind me of my good qualities.
That's important, what you've just raised there. And I love the point where you said your husband's a fan. I mean, that's awesome. And I've heard that a few times where, the other partner has mentioned that they're their partner's biggest fan. How, like, coming back to that, and it obviously sounds like you've got a very, very supportive relationship. How did that work? I mean, because there's a lot of people that struggle to find the right partner and have that relationship. How did you two find each other and know that it was right and have this relationship that sounds like it really works?
Well, first of all, it's hard. It's still hard because we're two different people. So it's not easy.
Yeah,
But I think that, see, we met when I was in college,
yeah,
and we were actually introduced. My youngest sister was in school with my husband's niece.
mm,
So he was a surprise baby. So he was born 10 years after his brother. So his niece,
yeah,
his niece is my baby sister's age. So that's interesting. But that's how we met. And at that point, I wasn't, I was just like, whatever. I'll meet him. He sounded nice on the phone. And we hit it off with our values. We had a lot of the same values. We wanted the same things out of life. And I'm going to tell people today that it didn't hurt that we lived an hour away from each other, because that distance, really brought us together. We spent a lot of time on the phone late at night. I worked when I was going to college and working, and
yeah,
he had a full-time job. He's a couple years older than me. And, but we spent a lot of time on the phone talking, getting to know each other. And I think that part of the relationship was a good foundation for the rough times of moving into a household together,
yeah.
where your differences really come out. But yeah.
Time on the phone, because one of the things I understand with relationships, one of the key points, and I'm going to quote my mother here too as well, you said that communication is important. And from your perspective, communication, talking, because you're talking on the phone, was the main part of the relationship for such a period of time. Is that something that you developed, or did it just come naturally that you were communicating? And how did that, how did that develop? Or
Well, it happened because of our schedules. We couldn't see each other as often as we liked. So we spent a lot of time talking.
yeah,
Because I worked probably about 30 hours a week while I was going to college full time.
yeah,
And so that included weekends, and he worked a full-time job. Like I said, there was an hour difference traveling
yeah,
or driving. So we couldn't just stop by and see each other. So
mm,
we talked.
yeah.
We got to know each other very well.
Yeah, so through that communication, you actually got to know, because you mentioned you had similar values as well. Was that a conscious discussion, or did you just, or did it just come out and go, "Oh, actually, we relate to that"?
We just talked about everything. Just
Yeah.
conversation just came really easy to us. We just talked and talked and talked.
Fantastic. So from that perspective, because I'm just trying to get an understanding from, with people, and because a relationship for a lot of people is really important, and some people really struggle with that. And from your side of things, you said you've had problems as well. How did you
Mhm.
work through those problems? I mean, you obviously, it sounds like you had a good foundation in communication because of the background that you had, and you developed that. But when things come up, how did you work through that and continue forward? Where some people might just throw in the towel and say, "Oh, this is all too hard."
Well, first and foremost, you have to have that commitment, because it is easy to walk away.
Yeah,
Especially nowadays, it's super easy to walk away. So you have to have the commitment to say, I'm going to work on it.
yeah,
And the fact that we do have similar values, we do have some similarities, we also have some big differences.
yeah,
And one of those big differences is my husband will get angry and
yeah,
he needs time to cool off.
yeah.
And when we get in a fight, I want to immediately make everything better and smother him.
Yeah,
So it took me a long time to learn to give him his space. It was
Yes.
very hard for me.
Yes.
And it was very hard for him. Because he needed the space, he wanted to walk out so that he could cool off and come back.
Yes.
And for me, I viewed that as he's leaving me. So, right. So we had to have that conversation, and I tell him, when you leave, this is how it makes me feel. And, he had to tell me, okay, I understand that. I respect that, but you got to give me some space. So once we got to that, the first year was rough, let me tell you. But once we got to that understanding, it was easier.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because there's a pastor who has a program called Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage, Mark Gungor. I don't know if you know of him or not, but he talks. I'll send you a link. But he talks about he said he has a program, Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage, and he talks about where men have what's called a nothing box, and that's where we go to solve our problems. And it sounds exactly like what your husband was doing. It's like, okay, I need to go over here to cool down and then come back, and then I can have that discussion, and that's how we deal with things. But because we communicate differently, we both feel that the other party is not supporting us. Like, he feels that he needs to walk out. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like he needed to walk out, have his space, and then he'd come back. And that's how he could adjust it. You feel like he's walking out, he's leaving you. And it's like, and he feels like you chasing him is not giving him his space. But it sounds like you had that ability to talk about it and come to that understanding. Once you actually talked about it, was that whole process much easier?
Yes. And it's a process that, of course, has to occur over and over again, throughout the years. Yeah. You always have to. And I want to throw in, when I was going through the certification process for Gallup, I did have my husband take the assessment as well. Yeah. Which was another eye-opener. Yeah. Because it let me know that where his top strengths are, they're at the bottom of mine. Yeah. So it also, even though we had, let me see, it was over 25 years of marriage already, there's still so much to learn about each other. And of course, when emotions get involved, you forget everything you learn anyway. But when I see what you say, communication is always different. So what I see as important and what he sees as not important, but it's not communicated that way. He doesn't understand why I get upset, and I don't understand why he doesn't think it's a big deal. Yeah. Right. It's because we have a different process of the way we think of things. So understanding how your partner processes and thinks helps you to understand why you're not seeing eye to eye. And then you can communicate better that way. Yeah.
And was that, like, as you say, that was an eye opener? You'd been married for quite a period of time. You'd known each other for a long time, and then you do this, or he does the Gallup test, and you go, oh, there's all these extra things here. From that perspective. And the reason I'm touching on this is the work that you're doing with people coming out. I mean, having a solid foundation at home is, creates a big difference as to whether you can make those steps, like coming back into the workforce that you did. You mentioned that your husband was really supportive of that. So finding ways to create that strong relationship and knowing each other I think it's really important. And it sounds like you did that. Like, even though there was, you weren't given an instruction manual at the start of your marriage to how to do this, and someone mentioned that to me. We're not given, we get all excited about the marriage and don't think about, all excited about the wedding, and we don't think about the marriage and the long term, how we're going to deal with these kind of things. But you seem to have worked through that with your husband quite well. I mean, you've obviously had your ups and downs, but you mentioned you had a commitment to each other. What other things do you think made your relationship really work?
I think besides us having a personal commitment to each other, it's also important to be around people who respect that and support that. Right. When you have a group of friends who at the same, because we need to talk to people, right? We talk to people about our problems. So if you're confiding in someone about a problem you're having in your relationship and their advice is, oh, get out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, if your life is not in danger,
Yeah.
that's probably not someone you want to surround you, because they're not going to support your marriage.
Yeah. And that's taking the presumption. I want to step back a little bit there, because you took the time to know each other before you got married. So, I mean, the
Hmm.
process here of, obviously, as it's colloquially put, you rush off to Vegas and get married, but it's probably better to get to know the person first. But also, was it important for you to know yourself as to what you wanted in a relationship when you started? Is that something that you'd considered when you were looking and getting to know each other?
I would say I did not know myself
Yeah.
like I know myself today. I
Mm,
definitely would recommend people to know themselves,
mm,
because it's hard for other people to know you if you don't know yourself. It's hard for other people to value you if you don't value yourself.
yeah.
But like I said, he's a fan, so
Yeah.
he's been an encourager and a supporter. One of our inside jokes, right, is I was always very quiet
Yes.
and never spoke up. And he encouraged me to speak up. So now he gets blamed for when I speak up too much.
So when he says, "Look, you're talking too much," he can't really complain about that now. Well, yeah.
That's right.
I love that. That's awesome. Okay, so with your going through your life, and you mentioned about on your website that as you were doing things, you never quite felt fulfilled. So you do something, you'd kind of conquer it, you didn't quite feel fulfilled, and you also got bored after that. Is that,
Yeah.
how did you?
Yes.
Do you want to talk a bit about that and how you again, if working towards finding your way? I mean, I can relate to that. There's many things that I've started and then I've done it and then gone, out now this is boring. How it was it a constant battle of trying to find new things to do, or how did you work through that?
Yes. It's always looking for something else, because you don't, well, speaking from myself, I
Mm,
didn't feel fulfilled. I
yeah,
didn't know that that was the issue. I just knew that basically I call it, like I said, being bored, right? I did this, I got it to where I needed to be. But what's next?
yeah,
Right. So I had the one retail job. I took over a department. It was a receiving area of a big, um, it wasn't Walmart, but it was something similar to a super Walmart, where they had the groceries and the general merchandise. And I took over the receiving area.
yeah,
That was a mess. The person who was there before just left it. And I learned everything because I had never worked back there. I learned all the positions. I got it organized.
mm,
Um, I got all the employees to work together. We were doing very well. And then it's like, okay, that's no longer a challenge.
yes,
Now what? I don't want to do this every day the rest of my life. So I had same thing. I was managing the church. After 5 years, I'm like, this just isn't doing it for me anymore. But and then I fell into the coaching, and I'll say that I don't think I found it. I think it found me.
yeah,
And that is where I get my passion from, is helping people and looking back in life. Because if you look back in your life, and some of the clues are things that come easy to you, that bring
mm,
you happiness, that you're easily successful at, that people tell you you're good at. Those are some clues to look for,
yeah,
right? And I had always been someone that people had come to talk to for advice, which coaching's not advice, just going to say that, but to help them out, right? I love to train people, to see them succeed and grow. So those are the kinds of things that when I look back on my life, where I actually got joy, and that's what coaching does for me when I'm able to help people. It gives me true joy to see them become more of themselves and value themselves.
interesting. What you said there? There was a part that stood out for me where you said that listening to what people tell you you're good at. Um, Now, from your perspective, I mean, because I listen to a lot of people, and sometimes people say, listen to conversations, and someone will say, "Oh, you're good at that," and other people kind of brush it off. And is that a process that you went through, or when someone said you were good at something, you went, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm good at that," because it sounds like you really need to listen to what other people are saying. But if you actually listen to what they're saying, you'll find much quicker what you're good at because you're getting that feedback. Is that your experience, or how did you listen to what people were saying, and was it difficult?
That was actually reflection is when I noticed that. So through my certification process with Gallup, that's one of the things that they tell you to look for. And
Mm,
that's when I took the time to look back. Is through my life, it was always, okay, you did that, move on. What's next, right? Do
yeah,
the next thing, do it well. If you don't do it well, do it over.
yeah.
So it wasn't that where I paid attention. It was later in life when I reflected.
Right. So at the time when people might have said that you're good at this, like good at helping people, you might not have listened, but then later when you reflected back, that was when you noticed and go, actually, these are things that I'm good at and I connect well with, by the sounds of it.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And it sounds like too, from your perspective, what drove you was more the challenge of getting something done and learning that process. Because it seems like you went into an environment, it was new and you had to learn the ropes, so to speak, and that excited you. Then once you'd learnt the ropes and it became repetitive, it became boring. Is that the experience that you had?
Yes, there's actually one of my top 10 talents is learning.
Right.
So if I'm in a place where I'm no longer learning, I'm not going to be happy at all.
Yeah. And is that's where the boredom came from? It was like you're not learning anymore. It's just rote, sort of repetitive stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, that's definitely a part of it.
And is that like from that perspective, like when you're coaching people, you're constantly got this area of challenge and learning. Is that what fulfills you, do you think?
That is part of it. That's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
I'm also actually in my top 5. I also have developer, which means that I like to see people grow to their potential.
Yes.
So yeah, so that's a big part. So the learning, I love to learn and I love to share what I know.
Yeah.
And sometimes I got to rein that back because people don't always like to hear what I have to say.
Well, that's one of the hardest things. That's one of Cher's first principle is personal responsibility, and it is hard to hear that your troubles. It's a quote from I think it's Aristotle. I can't remember off the top of my head. That it's hard to hear that your own troubles are generally of your own making. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but is that like when you're working with people, how do you overcome that where people need to listen? Because sometimes, people want to hear what they want to hear, not what they need to hear, which, I can say I'm very guilty of that myself. And, how do you overcome that?
Well, if I speak from a coaching perspective, it's not an issue because I shouldn't be doing most of the talking
Yeah.
unless it's in the form of a question.
Right.
So when they need to hear something, you have to ask the right question so that they're the ones saying it.
Yeah.
They come to that realization. Now, as a parent, you always have I've been around a lot longer than you and I have the experience, right? Or the old, I told you
Yes.
because I said so. Yeah. And as far as like in situations when you're with coworkers, you really have to gauge the person, right? You have to know the person because when we're talking about communication isn't just an outpouring of information, right?
Mm,
It's a two-way street, at least a two-way street. There's two people, it's a two-way street. You
yes.
have your receiver and your giver.
Mm,
And you always have to remember that what you're giving isn't always received in the way it's intended.
yeah. No, that's When that happens, like when it's not received the way that it was intended, how do you adjust to that, or what do you do? I mean, because sometimes people can get really offended when the intention was not to offend at all.
Right. You just every situation is different.
Hmm.
Probably the most common time that happens is right between spouses.
Okay.
Be-
Between spouses.
between spouses. Well, for one, for me, even in general,
Hmm.
I have to keep in mind that I have the issue that I always have thoughts running through my head that I want to communicate.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I communicate, I forget to give the context.
Okay. Yep.
So my husband's a good reminder that I do that, because
Okay.
what in the world are you talking about?
Yeah.
But so that's important. So always keeping in mind also what the other person's what they're going through,
Yeah.
because it's always received differently depending on the mood of
Yeah.
the experiences of the person, what's happened to them recently. And if communication goes wrong, you always look for clarification.
Right.
And if you get a response that's not what you're expecting, try to rephrase the communication, have understanding with the person. I understand I made you feel that way. That was not my intention. This is what I meant. Try to rephrase it. And, it might take a few times to go back and forth to really get that understanding across.
Is that the key part to that? Is that listening? Going, okay, I put this out there. I haven't got the response I wanted, which is listening, and then adjusting your approach. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes. Yes. Listening is a big part of communication. Most people think communication is more about talking, but it's probably more about listening, right? What they say, God gave you two ears and one mouth, right?
Yeah, I relate to that. I think I spent most of my time with no ears. Um, and it was later in life that yeah, it's interesting how the dynamic changes. From my personal experience, I've noticed the dynamic changes. I always felt that I wanted to help, so I was always wanting to talk. But now
Mm.
I feel that it's better to just shut up and ask questions and just listen, and not even a lot of times not even put my opinion forward, and that creates a better relationship from what I've experienced. From your perspective as well, one of the other things I heard was that communications too is not so much what you say, but how you make the other person feel. Is that, from your experience as well with working with people to focus on how, how they communicate as opposed to what they're saying?
Yes, because communication isn't just words, right? It's body language
Mhm.
also. So when we're communicating, we need to be really looking at the whole person. And
Yeah,
if you can understand what kind of a position that person's in, mentally, physically, and how their thought processes are,
yeah,
because some people need to really think before they speak. So if
mm,
you're asking for a response and you're not getting it,
yeah,
sometimes people get angry, but
yeah.
you have to let that person think it through. So knowing how that person's mind works
Mhm.
also helps in that communication. It's not as simple as we think it is, really.
Yeah, no, well, if it was, it'd probably have a lot less conflict in the world if communication was easy.
Right, right.
Um, so you're working with professional mums to help find their inner talents. And you've got obviously got a lot of experience as being a mum, and also with a working side of working as well. Now, when because one of the other things you talk about is to how to overcome the challenges in life. So you're talking with professional mums to find their inner talents and overcome the challenges in life. What are the key challenges, do you think, if you were to categorize into groups, what are there key categories that, of challenges that people face in that space that you're working?
Well, I think one of the main challenges is that the woman often forgets that they're a woman. They
Right.
forget to take care of themselves. When we look at a person, a lot of times we talk to the person for who they are in family life
Yeah.
or who they are in their professional life.
Yeah.
right? When actually that person is one person.
Right.
We
Yeah.
can't talk to that person like they're two or more people.
Mm.
When you look, I mean, and this goes for men as well, right? So you're a woman, you can be also with the woman, you're a wife, you're a mother, you're a daughter, you can be a grandmother, an employee, a boss. There's just a lot of roles into that one person.
Mm.
So when we're working with a person, you have to look at the whole person,
Yes.
not just, well, I had a bad day at work and I can't get this done, because a lot of times there's something else going on either within or in the home that's either affected by it or causing it.
Mm.
So a lot of times when people come to a coach with an issue, it's not as cut and dry as the issue, because people are complex. They're not just one aspect of a person.
So from that perspective, I mean, what I'm understanding is that you're talking about the person comes to you, and when addressing the challenges that they might be facing, they might come to you with a career problem, but you need to look at the whole picture as well. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And how do you get them to open up about that and realize that those broader issues might be affecting, for example, their career?
It would be through talking and listening. So, and by talking, I mean, for a coach, it'll be asking questions and allowing the client to talk and listen for the keywords or things that they're saying and repeating it back to them. Well, I heard you say,
Yeah.
can you tell me more? Or
Mm.
how did that make you feel? And it's through that conversation where you find out where the real problems are. And sometimes the clients are very surprised.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question. Is it common for them to find out that the problems that they're having are actually in a different area than what they were expecting?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And like are most of those, from that perspective, if someone's coming with a career, seeking career advice or how to move forward with their career, that there's actually inhibitors within their relationship or with their children that might be affecting their ability.
Or it could even be something more from within. They don't really, like I said, understand their own value, what they have to offer,
Mm.
because they've been told you should do this, and they're trying to find something to create that joy in their life by following what they're told to do, and that's not where they really belong.
Yeah. And is that like scary, for someone to go through and go, okay, because I would imagine, to have your whole structure of your world thrown in turmoil. I mean, you've got a very supportive husband. Some other people might not be in that position, and if they're going to go, well, actually, I'm not doing what I love. I need to do something different. Um, how do people address that?
I don't think it's scary, because I think by the time they come to me, they're at a point where they're looking for that change. So it's more of a surprise or excitement or even like a wonderment,
Yeah.
very inquisitive.
Yeah, so by the time they come to you, they're actually at a point where they're receptive to new ideas, and maybe this is an issue. How do you, I mean,
Mhm.
from someone's perspective, let's say someone has, chosen a career because that was what was expected of them, from their parents, and that's what they've gotten used to. They're in a relationship, or marriage where, it's kind of fairly, I can say the word routine, but maybe that's not the right word, where the expectations are fairly standard as to how things are going across. Can it be difficult for someone to then, rock that boat, so to speak, and go, actually, I don't want to, go to the office anymore. I want to take up painting and be an artist. And how does someone work through that?
Yes, and if you're talking about somebody in a relationship, then obviously you would need to bring in the other person
Yeah.
at some point
Mm.
to ensure that the communication is flowing properly.
Yeah.
Because for somebody to come in and just say, I need to change a career because I'm unhappy, that can be received in a totally different way than it's intended.
Yeah.
But then again, if you just want to sit home and paint and you are earning 50% of the income to keep a roof over your house, you might need to look at your options. But the great thing about coaching is that a coach doesn't tell you what you should do and what the right thing to do is. They ask the questions for you to find the answers that are within you. So maybe there's a way at your current position where you can still feel fulfilled. It just might not be quite in that position, or you need different responsibilities. So it's intricate. It's not just cut and dry.
Yeah, we're complex creatures, aren't we?
Yes.
So from that perspective, is it a case of someone might not be feeling fulfilled, but they're not sure what they want, and through that process, you help them uncover what that is, and then work out a strategy? Well, you don't work it out, but with them, work out a strategy how to integrate that into their life. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely fair to say. Yes.
And do you have a process that you work with them to work through that?
I do have a process, and I'm also adding to my toolkit.
Yeah.
So.
So what is, because it sounds like a lot of what you're doing at the moment is someone will come to you and you ask them a lot of questions well, maybe not a lot of questions, but you ask them questions to find out where they're at, and then develop because you mentioned on your website, you develop a bespoke plan for them with them. Is that how your process works?
Yes. We do need to have, of course, we have the initial conversation to see what they're looking for, to make sure it's a good fit. Whenever you talk with a coach, you need to talk with the coach to make sure it's a good fit for both the coach and the client. And there's a lot of work on behalf of the client too. If you're not willing to do the work, you won't get the results. So that's important. A lot of people think you can just go get fixed or whatever. I don't know. But yes. So we'll need to ask the client lots of questions to see. For me, it's important to know how they feel about themselves, what they feel their strengths and talents are, because that might be something that needs to be developed with the assessment. Is a quick way to understand and confirm what a person's talents and values are and how they can use those. It's easy for me to interpret and easy for them to confirm. And generally, by talking to the client, you can develop I'll say, like a set of bones to work with, right? Because different conversations on a different day can take you in a different direction. So it's not firmly set that we're going to go from A to Z. Sometimes we might have to travel zigzag or go back, depending on what's uncovered.
So it sounds very much like it's a journey and a process of discovery. Is that what happens?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do people often get surprised with what they find? And how do they, like, is there, because can people go through a variety of different emotions and go, oh, and,
it's a variety of things. I think I've had one client that was truly surprised because this lady she basically said she had no strengths. And yes. So when I took her through the process, she's like, well, this can't be right. And so we went on the process of discovery of how those talents has showed up in the past and led to successes.
Yeah.
That for me was a moment I'll never forget. To see someone who is an adult in her 40s realize that she has strengths to offer, and she has had them all along, because she hasn't had somebody in her life to tell her that. To me, that's very rewarding for me. And I think a lot of people, they just need that. Yeah.
That's interesting that you talk about that she had a belief as such that she had no talents. Is that because from my understanding, a belief is just a thought that you've repeated over and over again, and you seem to have relate to that from when you were young, and you had this belief that you changed your belief to say, I'm going to find what I'm good at and focus on that. Going through that process of that awakening, is it difficult for people to overcome and realize that the beliefs are something that they've either had from their parents or that they've picked up elsewhere, and all they need to do is just repeat new ones, and that'll eventually take over?
I think that process, that understanding that they can repeat things and become to understand and become a part of them, is difficult for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that if they don't already have that belief, it's hard for them to grasp, right? Like I talked about the exercise of the affirmations in the mirror. People who you have do that process, it's because they don't have that belief about themselves. So it's hard for them to get there. It can be easy for them to just say the words, but to really encompass them into what they believe is quite difficult.
Yeah. I'm just relating to that because, I think from my background, I was quite fortunate in that I was quite open to that, and there was some beliefs that I had, and I simply made a recording of my own voice and then stuck it under my pillow and let it repeat over and over again as I was sleeping, and it changed very quickly. But I always wondered what it is that stops a person from actually wanting to believe that, whether it's because to me it seems so simple. And I was just wondering what your thoughts might be on that. What is it that stops people from seeing that and then actually allows them to open up at some point?
Yeah. So at one point you said that what is it that makes them not want to do it? I don't think it's not that there's not a want there. I think it's just hard. I think that so many people have, like, again, been told what's wrong, that they don't do something well, that why couldn't you have done that better? This person over here is doing a much better job than you are. Why are you not doing that? There's such a focus on the negative and what we can't do that it's hard to grasp the positive and what's right about us. Because even if we sit there and say, I am strong, you have somebody over there saying, you're weak. You didn't do it. Why? Because you don't have the fortitude to do it. And then you're going to go tell yourself you're strong, and you have one or more people telling you something else. So it takes a lot for a lot of people to build that up within themselves because they're not surrounded by the people who encourage and support them.
So it's really important, from what you're saying, is to surround yourself with people that will encourage you and support that. Is that what you also incorporate? And
Yes.
How can someone do that if, like, they're in, just say, and we're coming back to the relationship and being a strong foundation, and I'm relating to that because there's a couple of relationships I had earlier on in my life that weren't very supportive and can be detrimental. But when you're in that kind of relationship and have people around you, I think it's probably difficult. When you're looking at it from a friend's perspective, it's easier to let go of the friends than to let go of a marriage. And ideally, you want to make the marriage work. Especially from a financial perspective, it does cost a lot of money. And how do you get? How does someone who has that negative, those negative comments being put forward to them, find a place where they can actually start moving forward?
Yeah. So there may be a time when someone has no one else to depend on, and they just have to come to that realization that change is totally up to them. But also from a coaching perspective, when we're looking at people and relationships, there may be a point where they are recommended to go to counseling, and that work has to be done first, because coaching is not counseling. And if it's a really bad bad situation where counseling is needed, that needs to be handled by a professional.
Yeah. Okay. And from that side of things, how much of that do you think is attraction as well? Like if you have a negative belief of yourself, then you attract people that reinforce that belief.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because how many times are you with a group of people? I mean, it's that, right, that crowd mentality.
Hmm.
Well, that's an ugly dress she's wearing, isn't it?
Hmm.
Well, people are afraid to speak up and say, well, I think it looks great on her, or
Hmm.
that, or whatever else. So absolutely, when we're putting out negative and when we feel negative about ourselves, we
Hmm.
are not giving people any reason to think differently.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just wondering about that and that process, because as you were talking about that, I was thinking back to my own personal experiences from when I was younger, and certainly some people that I associated with was because of the thoughts I had about myself, and particularly when I think about a relationship, some of the people that I had a relationship with were reinforcing what I believed about myself, and it was only when I changed me first, then I started to, and just unfortunately for me, I wasn't married at that time, and it was easy to end a relationship when that's the whole point of dating, is to find out, do you want to be with that person?
Right.
Um, but I was just wondering how you go through that process, because that was something, that would be really difficult if you're in that situation, to when you start awakening yourself, and then you've got to adjust how your whole life works. And if you've got a long history with a group of people, or with a person, how does that integration work? Or how does that change what happen?
Well, again, like you said, you have to start with yourself,
Mm,
and then you just have to deal with things. If it's a relationship, I mean, it might have to come to the point where you have to make a decision about that relationship.
mm,
If you are in a relationship that is not good, and your spouse, your partner, doesn't want to see you become a better you, to be your best,
mm,
that might not be the relationship for you, no matter what it looks like, whether it's marriage, living together, dating.
mm.
I mean, if you're with someone who doesn't value you, I mean, that's you're never going to value yourself,
Yeah.
because you always have that person telling you that you're of no value. So sometimes hard decisions need to be made.
Yeah, and because I'm coming back to what you mentioned earlier, and that's why I really wanted to get into the depth of your relationship with your husband, because as you said, he's your biggest fan. He's a fan, and he's always supportive. And yes, you have communication, and we all have things that we need to talk through. But it sounds like the foundation of what you've got with your husband is he's your fan and will be supportive of you as a person, regardless of the things that you want to do. Within the bounds of putting certain caveats on that, but it sounds like he's very supportive, and from your perspective, that's been really key to you being able to do the things that you're doing, and when you talk about finding your inner talents, having that support network around you seems really critical.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So does someone, like, before getting involved with coaching, do they need to have that worked out, or is it a case of maybe they come to you and then they find that out and have to go away and then come back to sort that out? How does that work?
Well, I can say that I have not coached someone who didn't have someone to support them. I
Right.
think I think every person has someone. They just might have to figure out who that is.
Yeah. And like you say, it's about finding what you like about yourself and what you're good at. And that's the process that you take people through. Well, the process of finding what they're good at so they can focus on that. Is that,
Yes.
yeah. So when you're coming, so let's talk about, the business that you're running now, and we move into that. Like, with the services that you offer, how do people reach you, and what's the process to get to know you? And this is the part where you pitch your wares. So you want to take us through that process, and how does someone contact you? What is the initial steps? Just to give people a bit of a summary so they know what to expect.
Sure. So I am active on LinkedIn and Facebook. My profiles are public. So if you want to learn about me, I'm an open book. So you can read and look through everything. I'm on Instagram too, but anyway. I have my website that I'm working on updating, but it is my name, michelegunn.com. If you want to talk or find out more, you can message me on any of the platforms, or you can also schedule a discovery session. That's a 30-minute session. It's at no charge to talk, find out if we're a good fit, if you have questions about coaching, what I have to offer, and what your struggles are. Because it's important that, like I said, that you have a good fit with the coach. You need to work with someone who you are going to be able to trust and open up with. Because if you can't be honest, we can't help you.
Yes.
And also, we need to know what your challenges are, because if I don't feel I can help you, then I might be able to find you someone who can.
Yeah. So it might not be the case of sometimes if it's not a good fit that you'll refer people off. Is that the case?
Yes.
Yeah. And then after the people, you have that initial discovery session, what's the next stage? Let's say there is a good fit. What is the process that you work through with them?
Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about what the coaching agreement will look like, what kind of work they want to do, what some of their outcomes are, and we can determine how often we want to meet. And obviously in this day and age, Zoom is perfect.
Yes.
Also, we can do phone calls. I personally like to see the client because there's more to communication than just the words. But I have worked with people just over the phone.
Yeah.
And I have international clients as well as clients in the US where I am. And we will work out what we feel will be beneficial with the client, and we'll work out what the program will look like, or the coaching process will look like, and what the fees will look like.
Fantastic. And we'll put all those details in the show notes so people can contact you, and all those contacts are there. Michele, before we finish up, the question I always ask at the end of it is, if you were to share one or a couple of key wisdoms for the listeners, what would those key wisdoms be?
Well, love yourself and always be you.
I love that. That's beautiful. Simple, straight to the point. Michele Gunn, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for coming on board, and love to have a catch up with you some point in the future again.
That sounds great, Jamie. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for being part of the Share.Care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes, for others and for you.